Denise Findlay presenting Indie Scot News, and I have two great guests with me, Lisa Keogh and Robert Reid. Both Lisa and Robert dipped their toe into being parliamentary, not parliamentary candidates, that's for the future, council candidates in the recent local authority elections for Alba. And they both did very well in their first outing, first of many, let's hope. And so this week we're going to talk about what's been happening this week in the news, but briefly we'll touch on something that happened at the end of last week. So Lisa is a well-known campaigner for women's rights, and Robert has just finished his university in Aberdeen. And Lisa and Robert both have something in common, and that is their universities weren't all that fond of free speech. So we'll come on to that later. But first, let's get the reactions to the news of the independence referendum on the 19th of October 2023, that Nicola Sturgeon is now committed. Oh, Nicola Sturgeon and Patrick Harvey are now committed to delivering. So Lisa, what's your take on this?
It's not going to happen. She doesn't want independence. It's not going to happen. I'm not even getting hopes built on it. It's not going to happen. I don't even think a bookie would take that bet.
Okay, that's short and sweet. What about yourself, Robert?
I guess I'm a bit more optimistic. I think we're in a position now where there can't be any more backtracking. So they have to deliver on that referendum. I can't actually see the referendum taking place on the date as proposed for a variety of different reasons. But they've also, which I quite welcomed, the fact that they've kind of moved on and taken the kind of Alba Party position on this issue and said, okay, well, without any legal referendum, we'll have a plebiscite election. And it's quite, I feel quite vindicated, because that's what myself and many others in the Alba Party have been talking about, campaigning on for past 4 or 5 years, and many people in the SNP too. Remember, Chris McElhaney was booed on stage because he proposed this kind of Plan B plebiscite election. So it's good to see the SNP have came around the kind of pragmatic way and sensible way to achieve independence, and moved away from that kind of gold standard. So I'm a bit more optimistic than Lisa, I guess, but I'm just kind of looking forward to getting out there and campaigning for independence. That's why I'm interested in politics. And I think the only way we can really achieve independence is if the movement unites behind each other. And so hopefully that comes into play, and we'll be independent by 2024 at the latest.
So the United Yes movement has got off to, shall we say, a shakyish start. The pair of you, both of you, had experienced problems with free speech at your universities, and just recently, yesterday or the day before, a Green councillor managed to get a venue to cancel an Alba book event. So tell me about your experiences of at your university and how you felt when your free speech was impacted. So what about you start, Lisa? How did it affect you?
Do you know what? I didn't really know it was going to affect me at first. You know the story. I was in the law class. I was asked to define a woman. I said women are people with vaginas and the ability to reproduce. I also said not all men were rapists. I said that men were stronger than women. It wasn't until I got the email later on saying that I had said something offensive during class discussions, and then it wasn't until I got the email later on in April saying that I'd made offensive remarks that I realised that there was no free speech. When I went to the meeting, I was obviously asked about this. Did you say this? Did you say this? Did you say this? Yes, I said that. And obviously there was a very real chance I was going to lose the law degree at that point because I had said something against the grain at university. How did that make me feel? That made me feel, I don't know, a roller coaster of emotions. The anger, I was angry at first. I was angry that I was getting reprimanded for speaking facts in a law class. I was angry that essentially there had been a witch hunt against me. Then the fear sort of set in. So I was scared. I thought I was going to lose the degree. And then the determination to just fight back kicked in. So yeah, it was a bit of a roller coaster.
And you never ever backed down, did you, Lisa? You never backed down.
It's not in my nature to back down. If I believe I'm right, I will fight to the very end. If I think I might be wrong, I'll take a step back. I'll reassess the situation. But if I know I'm right, then no, I won't back down. Which is why we're going to court.
Yeah, and so you have you're intending to take Abertay University to court. Is that correct?
Well, I started legal proceedings last October, and we have got a date for the hearing now. The hearing will be on the 22nd of August, so next month, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So good luck with that. It is necessary to do this because people's free speech is being impacted, and it's not just a matter of the facts. You just said a matter of fact, and this ideology is taking over universities, and they can't listen to facts anymore. There's something really dangerous about this. So there's two sides to it. There's the actual principle of free speech, but also this really worrying move to have universities disavow facts in favor of a religion.
The thing is, I didn't know about this ideology. I didn't know about this ideology until I said what I said. And I think most people don't even know about this. So most people would side with me and say, oh yeah, women, it's only women that have got vaginas. So you have to be in the sort of environment to know about this. So there's a very small percentage of people that know about this as well, which is what's catching people like me out. Like, obviously, I was raising children. I've worked. I wasn't your typical student. I wasn't some young drinking student that was out watching YouTube or wherever they find out about this nonsense. That wasn't me. So unless you're in that sort of like environment, you don't know about this make-believe stuff.
So, Robert, you had a very similar experience, and it must have been a terrible experience for you because you'd organised an event which the party leader, Alex Salmond, was attending, and the university cancelled at the very last minute. So how did you get through that?
It was quite a tiring day, actually, because it was during my election campaign. I was at the mosque during a day meeting the imam, and I got a phone call from one of my friends. And in order to host an event at Aberdeen University, you need to have kind of a sign off from an affiliated club. So I used my friend who's president of the Golf Society, and he said that it came under a lot of pressure from people, just students, and the student newspaper asking their position on trans rights. And if they agreed with the Labour Party, and the Golf Society were saying that they're a politically neutral institution, but we're happy to let a kind of talk on independence happen on campus. But then they went down to meet with the university and the student association, and after that meeting, they came out and the event had to be cancelled. The university made it very clear to them that there'd be punishment made towards the Golf Society. My friend would be stripped of presidency for just thinking that this was allowed to go ahead. So then I think I had about 3 or 4 hours of meetings with the University and Student Association, and that day, and it was tiresome and it was stressful. And I thought, I couldn't quite believe this was happening. I knew there would be some sort of backlash because over the kind of previous few days, people would be block buying tickets with quite offensive language written all over the application, talking about our position on trans rights. Funnily enough, I don't think most people actually know what the Labour Party policy is on trans rights. But so I phoned Alex and Lee Wilson, who was also coming along, and outlined the situation. And we decided just to go ahead anyway and do the event outside the venue, like an old kind of style soapbox and speaker's corner. And it was good. We had, I think, around 60 or 70 people stand out in quite a cold Aberdeen night. But it was well worth it, and it was fantastic. And what Alex gave a speech, and one thing that really stuck with me, pointed to the university and says, that is a symbol, that it should be the bastion of principles like free speech, free thought and debate. And my case is just one example of many. Lisa is yet another, and Kathleen Stock down south. There's very high profile cases where universities are no longer bastions of free speech. I graduate tomorrow, actually, it's my graduation ceremony tomorrow, and I'll be one of the thousands of students over the last 600 years to graduate from that uni. But I think my experience and other students' experiences will be very different from those even 10, 15, 20 years ago who graduated. And it's a really worrying trend. And I think that it's people try to attack us and the ALBA party on our position on trans rights, but incidentally the ALBA book doesn't mention it once. It was a talk on independence, just like the one that's been cancelled in Partick in Glasgow. And so these people are trying to throw mud, trying to tar us with a bad name, because I think an element of it is fear that if there is no referendum next year, people will look for an alternative. And I think that's why they're coming after us in such a strong way. So I think I embrace it. I thought it was a fantastic experience standing outside, being banned from my own university. And I kind of would encourage anyone, if they're in a similar position, to stand your ground and fight this, because it's important. So we've drafted up a letter to the university. It's been signed off by quite high profile people who are advocates of free speech. And so hopefully that'll be getting published fairly soon.
And just to clarify, ALBA's position on trans rights is that we would like a citizens' assembly, because we feel it's the kind of issue that should go to citizens' assembly. I was there that night, and the trans activists were there. They were lovely, absolutely lovely, and they actually thanked Alex Salmond for free tuition, asked their question, got their answer, and were very, very pleasant people. So that's how things should be. And, the fact that the Citizens' Assembly is the way to go, and Alex Salmond is the man that brought in same-sex marriage in Scotland. So he knows how to handle tricky subjects. Same-sex marriage to me is not a tricky subject. It's straightforward. Yes, you're same-sex, you can marry. But at the time, actually, there was some controversy. And therefore, trans rights would be better at Citizens' Assembly, where these matters can be discussed. So that's our policy. Yes, we get tired because we want to stand up for women's rights and believe that women have the right to single-sex services and spaces, and that's very important. And girls have the right to single-sex sport. Women should have single-sex sport. This is what we believe as well, and it's not incompatible. And we can find a way through this. But on the subject, Suella Braverman, the Attorney General down in England, Westminster, she has said that she might intervene, might stop the Scottish Parliament bringing self-ID that's currently going through the Scottish Parliament, which would be a constitutional issue, I think. Another one for the Supreme Court, perhaps. Recently, For Women Scotland won a similar case, so Suella Braverman may have a good chance. So I'm wondering how you think this would play out in the context of an independence campaign, because clearly Better Together too could use the destruction of women's rights as a reason, perhaps, to vote no. So how do you think it will play out? So what do you think, Lisa?
Can Robert go first on this one, please?
Robert, what do you think?
It's a strange one. It's a difficult one because in any circumstances, I don't think the UK government should overreach into what is in control of the Scottish government. And I think I would take a principled position on, and even though I disagree with this particular policy, I still think it should be left to the Scottish Parliament and people that have been elected to represent Scotland there. However, I think the point you make about it being a kind of weapon to use in an independence referendum is very true, and I think it will be used. And I think that's perhaps the danger of having the plebiscite election where only votes for the SNP count for towards independence. I've been kind of debating this with myself and initially I thought, yeah, okay, the SNP stand unopposed for other independence parties, but I kind of came to the conclusion that no, I think each party has a strength in areas we can tap into. Lots of Labour Party voters feel quite disenfranchised by the SNP, feel turned off by the SNP. And I think that perhaps having a broader kind of set of parties standing with the Greens, the Alba Party, ISP, SNP, and all their vote total counts towards independence. I think that's a much better way to access communities, access people who are annoyed at the government, because it's so easy to use kind of single policy issues about the government to attack the independence cause. So having the Alba Party, having ISP, having just independent supporters out there campaigning, I think can show actually independence isn't just the SNP. In fact, independence probably bring the end of the SNP. So I think there's a YouGov poll or panel-based poll just released yesterday that showed 51% yes for independence, which was fantastic. But then it also had a question asking about if the plebiscite election, and it had the SNP on 47%. So that clearly shows people who are answering the same questions in the same survey are changing their minds when it comes to just voting for the SNP. So I think having that broad base, united independent support, I think that's the way we win it. And so we can disconnect from kind of stupid, silly policies like the ones that seem to be top priority for Holyrood at the moment.
Well, thank you, Robert. That's a really good answer. And I tend to agree with you. I think there's only two ways to go, and that's have every party stand and give every voter their home, or maybe an alliance when it's just a very like a one-line manifesto, and it says, and it's a yes alliance candidate. However, I have a suspicion that the SNP are looking to another 5 years on their gravy train. So we might have a little bit of a struggle to get them to agree to the Yes Alliance idea. But I'm sure people will be trying for what's best for Scotland.
I hope.
At least in our party. Lisa, your reaction then to the Westminster government overriding the Scottish government on self-ID?
I think it's a good thing, to be honest. I think anybody that's going to override the Scottish government on something like self-ID has got to be a positive. I understand the cons of it. They're going to use it so that people will vote no. But I think it's a good thing. I think it'll bring it to the table. I think it'll make people aware of what's happening. My problem with, obviously, I support independence. But my problem with it just now is if we get independence under SNP are not going to stand down. Even what Robert's just said there, the 51% that are saying they want independence, still 47% of them want the SNP, which shows me the SNP are not going anywhere anytime soon. So until Alba and all the other small parties have managed to muster up enough support, I don't personally think it's safe to have an independent Scotland under SNP, because women's rights and children's rights will absolutely be eradicated. We will live in a dictatorship, and that's not a place where I want to raise my children. That's not a place I want to live, and that's not a safe Scotland.
Well, that's two very different views there. But my kind of viewpoint is that the SNP get away with it because we're not independent. If we were, the only reason they're getting 47% is on the back of the independence vote. If they were judged on their record, then they wouldn't be getting 47%. But because they can rely on this pro-indy vote, that's how they win. And the only way Scotland's going to get a good government, a government that's competent, is to vote for independence. And then we'll be able to vote for the best people on the issues and not vote on the constitutional question. So that's kind of my viewpoint. So we've got a few different viewpoints here. So I think we're having a summer of independence because we may as well get the independence campaign started. And our 4 We Alba Book roadshow events. So on Friday the 8th at 7 p.m. in Parliament Hall, St Andrews, Alex Salmond will be discussing independence and the We Alba book that has the answers that the SNP haven't come up with on currency and borders and our relationship with Europe and our economy. And then on Saturday, we're having an event in Glasgow at the Grosvenor Hotel, Botanic Suite, at 1 p.m. Now, this event in Glasgow had a little bit of trouble because it was originally scheduled to be at a different venue. But a Green councillor who openly boasting on Twitter about writing to the venue to get the venue to cancel the event. And this is a Green councillor. So how are we going to have a Yes Alliance with these people when they're trying to get Yes events cancelled? This is an event to discuss independence. So that has been a bit of a shock. Then we're having an event on Sunday in Melrose. Now, Melrose is doing the We Alba book event and having a little social event afterwards. And they've called it The Gathering. And they made a lovely, very pretty advert for Facebook, and they put it on Facebook, and it's been on Facebook for weeks. And it got reported and told it was against the community guidelines of Facebook. And it's like, there's no way this advert is. So there seems to be some like concerted action against these events. And then on the 14th, Thursday the 14th at 7 p.m. in Perth at the George Hotel, we're having another We Alba book event with Alex Salmond. And so Alba is off and running on the independence campaign for this referendum with 4 Alba book events in a week, all with Alex Salmond, who is working as hard as he possibly can to achieve his life's dream and cause. But we're being hampered by the Greens that are meant to be on our side. It's ridiculous. So that's a problem for us. So what do you think about this, Robert?
I guess it's kind of true to form. It's the exact kind of same scenario that happened up in Aberdeen with me. I guess I'm a bit of a trendsetter now, but it's so self-defeating. And I think to be an elected official I think it's Partick that he represents, Blair Anderson, his tweet talked about how there's no place for Alpa in his ward. Well, there will be quite a few Alpa supporters in his ward. So he's talking about his own constituents in that way and tarnishing them with one brush. There's no way for any kind of councillor to act, and I hope he reflects on it, and I hope he gets a telling off from people higher up in his party. I won't hold my breath for that though, because yes. I think Patrick and Lorna have shown their colours on this issue. But it kind of makes a mockery of this idea that we're going to have a united movement. So long as the Greens continue to act in this way, I can't see for a second that they'll be willing to stand beside Alex Salmond or anyone else within the party. And that's a real shame, because a divided movement will struggle to win. They'll point to that the division, to the anger, so publicly displayed by the Greens that people will be turned off from that. People don't like divided movements. And at a time when I think the Better Together campaign or the No campaign, whatever they call themselves this time around, will probably be divided, because I don't think the Labour Party and the Tories will want to have a similar kind of situation as what they had in 2014. So when they have no clear leader and they are divided, we should be united together if we really want independence. And I think Blair himself was an activist in Better Together back in 2014. So perhaps his desire and passion for independence isn't as strong as you'd maybe like people to believe. But it's desperately sad, and hopefully he'll reflect on what he's done. And hopefully, I think we as a party need to do a lot more actually in pushing back on this kind of blatant attack on free speech. We're hopefully starting to do something with what happened at my event, and I hope we continue to do that for every single event these people try and stop.
And I noticed, like, it's quite ironic, I think might be the word, that on the very day that Blair is boasting about being able to close down an Alba event, Alex Salmond, who is somebody that has put aside any personal feelings and is held out his hand to work with the other parties, and he had a headline like "Let's unite for independence." So let's hope the Greens will listen. Not that I've got hopes that they'll listen, but let's hope they do. Not that I've got expectations they'll listen, but let's hope they'll do. Do you have any thoughts on this, Lisa?
Quite brief, just to say that's my reason for thinking, well, that's part of my reason for thinking that Nicola Sturgeon and the Greens and SNP are not going to hold an independence referendum. If they're trying to get talks shut down about independence, what hope have we got? They don't want people to know about independence. They don't want to sell independence. They want to stay together with the United Kingdom.
Okay, well, that's the end of this week, and let's hope we get better news over the summer, and we can have a better, more united, coherent independence campaign. And I hope to see everybody listening at one of these We Alba Book events, because I'm sure there'll be one near you. So, bye for now.